5 rounds of the F1 season are done and dusted after finishing off the Chinese Grand Prix. Max Verstappen was dominant, Mercedes were pretty useless, and Lance Stroll was about as successful as a certain Canadian hockey team. But for round 6 he'd have a chance to redeem himself, as for the first time this year we headed to America. Fuck yeah! Specifically to Florida and the Miami International Circuit, home of alligators, golf courses, and of course the notorious Florida Man headlines. Just waiting for the one that after this weekend says something like, Florida Man somehow manages to crash in sprint qualifying, the sprint race, regular qualifying, and the main race itself. But anyway, let's find out what did actually go down as we get into my ultimate review of Formula 1 and the 2024 Miami Grand Prix. Now, in the run-up to the weekend, quite a bit had been going on, with Ferrari announcing a deal with HP as a title sponsor and the team teasing a blue livery for the Grand Prix, with blue overalls, blue teaser post, and of course the new blue sponsor colours. Instead, we got this.
Brother, what's that? What's that, brother?
Over at Red Bull, and while there was no special livery, there was some of the biggest news this year, as Chief Technical Officer Adrian Newey, the man responsible for countless championship-winning cars, announced he'd be leaving the team.
Oh my god! Okay, it's happening! Everybody stay calm!
What's the procedure, everyone? What's the procedure?
Stay calm!
But why would the best car designer in F1 history want to leave a team that's doing so well and he's been at for years? Oh yeah, he works with Christian Horner. That makes sense now. But as team personnel goes, Red Bull weren't the only ones with a few problems, as it was reported that ex-Haas team principal and walking meme Günther Steiner will be suing his old team.
Fucking bunch of wankers. Yeah, bunch of fucking clowns, yeah.
It's just so unlike Haas to run into controversy and issues. Like, it just doesn't really happen. But the issue was over the team using Günther's likeness to sell merchandise and not paying him for it. Who'd have thought Haas would try and be cheap, eh? And then finally, after Alonso announced his contract for 2025 last race, we had another domino fall, as Nico Hülkenberg announced that he would be moving away from the American outfit and joining Sauber instead. So still no podiums on the horizon for him then. Into the one and only practice session, and Charles Leclerc wasted no time to show off his part blue Ferrari, stopping for the cameras as he spun the car round, coming out of the world's worst chicane. However, did also struggle to get it spun back round again. Struggling so much that in the end, well, he just had to turn it off, meaning we had a red flag less than 10 minutes in. But when we did get back going, it was Max Verstappen front and centre, as he did his best impersonation of Lewis Hamilton's brake magic lockup going deep at the final turn, with the final bit of action taking us then to Lando Norris, who after another second place finish last race was taking out all of his anger from still not having won on the pit lane bollard. Onto sprint qualifying now, and the first order of business was cars hitting the wall. First off, Fernando Alonso, who after tapping the right rear in the first session managed to do something seemingly impossible in the final part, as he was out-qualified by Lance Stroll.
That's not possible.
Let's agree to disagree.
Elsewhere though, and at turn 1, it was almost curtains for Piastri, as Valtteri Bottas ahead of him had all the spatial awareness of a blind fish and nearly turned right into the McLaren. And finishing off SQ1 were eliminations, where as per usual, in last place, was Alex Albon. As with Alex getting his final time deleted, he'd been out-qualified by Logan Sargent for the first time ever. Still only P19 though. On to SQ2 now, and surprise surprise, Mercedes looked dreadful. So much so that rather than just Hamilton being out early in qualifying, it was both of them. Not slow, however, was Lando Norris, as in SQ1 he was fastest, in SQ2 fastest again, and in SQ3 when it really mattered, oh, he was down in 9th place, just 4 thousandths ahead of the Haas.
No, I'm not having this. I'm not having this. No.
Meanwhile at the top though, and Max Verstappen was besting Charles Leclerc by 1/10 of a second, even if he said his lap was absolute trash and was completely surprised. With Daniel Ricciardo was surprising 4th place behind Sergio Perez in the other Red Bull.
I'm panicking.
Don't panic.
No, I am, because I'm going to lose my job.
But was you panicking when you...
Onto the sprint, and Lewis Hamilton turned into prime Daniil Kvyat, torpedoing his way down the inside at turn 1, with the following incident also then made worse by Lance Stroll, as he forgot Fernando Alonso existed and turned into the Spaniard who was leaving space for Hamilton.
All the time you have to leave a space.
with the real loser in all this being Lando Norris, as he got tagged on the outside and was spun round with the damage putting him out of the race. Further ahead, and Sergio Perez forgot how to brake, which allowed Daniel Ricciardo to get by and up into third ahead of Checo.
I'm panicking.
But all this Turn 1 drama brought out the safety car, which then brings us to controversial Hamilton moment number 2, with the Mercedes driver 10 kph over the speed limit, which earned him a drive-through, converted to a 20-second penalty. But the 7-time champ wasn't done there, as for the second half of the race he found himself behind Kevin Magnussen, aka Max Verstappen, but in a Haas, as the Dane's first move was to cut the chicane to make sure he stayed ahead of the Mercedes. 10-second penalty number 1. Fast forward a few laps later, and with the overspeed, Hamilton was getting by on the straight, but Danish Max was having none of it, diving up the inside, going too deep, and then hitting the Mercedes through turn 11 to retake 8th place. 10-second penalty number 2. But was he done there? Absolutely not. As with Hamilton getting by on the straight again, Kevin centered up the inside of the track and then well off the track as well. 10-second penalty number 3. All of these shenanigans over the final points place, which in the end went to Yuki Tsunoda because Hamilton had his penalty for speeding. Meanwhile, out in front, it was the Verstappen, Leclerc, Perez trio, with Daniel Ricciardo holding off Carlos Sainz all race long to take home P4. Into qualifying, and we begin with Mr. Q1 himself, Logan Sargent, who, despite being blocked by Tsunoda in the final turn, had done something quite incredible. A purple Sector 3.
What the hell happened here?
Still got knocked out though. As was Daniel Ricciardo, as after the P4 in the morning, things were back to normal it seemed in the afternoon. You know it's going wrong when both Alpines are ahead of you and through into Q2. On to the second part of qualifying then, and it seemed like Aston Martin had been diving into Ferrari's playbook by putting both cars on used tyres for the second part of quali.
What?
This of course meant they were both eliminated in Q2, with the rare Stroll ahead of Alonso showing itself once again. Q3 now, and let's get the formalities out of the way. Max Verstappen was on pole. But in the final runs, could anyone improve their lap time, gain position for the race? No, they could not. With the two Ferraris slotting in behind P2 and P3, bookended by the other Red Bull of Perez, and the only person making any progress being Lewis Hamilton, making the mega jump up from 10th place all the way to 8th. On to the start, and Sergio Perez nearly provided the craziest moment of the season so far, locking up and flying in between Verstappen and Sainz, coming so close to taking out the entire front three. Checo just seeing whatever's left of his Red Bull career flash before his eyes at turn 1. All of this though allowed Oscar Piastri to get up into 3rd place behind Leclerc, which then a few laps later became in front of him, at the final turn the Australian up into P2. Further down the pack and in the tractors that Oscar Piastri rejected, Ocon and Gasly were squabbling, squeezing side by side through the chicane and barely getting by without one of them ending up in the wall, with Pierre eventually the one coming out ahead in that one. Meanwhile, over at Mercedes, and Hamilton had jumped George Russell, only to then end up fighting Nico Hülkenberg, with the German getting by into the first turn, with Lewis then eyeing up a move to get back through, squeezing down the inside of the Haas on the back straight and making the move stick through the corner, only to mess it up about 4 turns later, locking up into turn 17, giving Hülkenberg an easy move back through to retake that 7th place. The life of Mercedes in 2024 is genuinely fighting a Haas for P7. With Lewis then making the final move to get by on lap 11, down into turn 11 and up to P7. With George then also making a move by Hülkenberg just a couple laps later. Up towards the front though, and it was McLaren bringing the action, with Lando Norris putting the pressure on Perez for 5th, and Piastri holding off Leclerc for that 2nd place, with Charles diving into the pits for the undercut on lap 20. With the Ferrari back out behind Hamilton's Mercedes, and Leclerc going for the move the long way round the outside of turn 11 with just enough room to make the move stick. Right at the top of the pack, and Max Verstappen decided the race didn't have enough action and so ploughed through the bollard at turn 14, just like I've done a million times on the F1 game, with Max then giving it the same treatment that his dad gave him and dumping it at the side of the road. With a virtual safety car needed to clear it from the racing line, but it not being long enough to help out any of the leaders. Though something that did help out the leaders, and Lando Norris specifically, was a full safety car, caused by Kevin Magnussen and Logan Sargent coming together through turn 3 and the Williams ending up in the barrier and out of the race. And who did the stewards deem to be at fault? Kevin Magnussen, meaning it was 10-second penalty number 4. But at the front, with Verstappen pitting before the safety car, it launched Lando Norris into the lead of the race, with all pit stops done and a straight fight to the end, with Verstappen having a look into turn 1 but Lando managing to keep hold of the lead at the restart. And then, just behind those two, it was Lewis Hamilton eyeing up Tsunoda, making a long move round the outside of turn 12, squeezing by just millimetres from the RB car up to P7. And up ahead of them, it was a battle between Carlos Sainz and Oscar Piastri, with Carlos diving up the inside of the McLaren at turn 17, parking it on the inside but crucially taking the place. But not over yet, as Oscar got by into turn 1 but locked up, allowing the Ferrari to get back through for good. And sadly for Oscar, that wasn't the end of it, as a small amount of damage made him vulnerable, with both Perez and Hamilton getting by on the very next lap. Oh, did you think it'd stop getting worse? Oh no. As with damage to the front wing, the Australian came into the pits to replace it, leaving him in last place, meaning it was McLaren in both last and first place with the entire grid between them, with Lando now just 10 laps from the end with a 5-second lead over Verstappen. What could possibly go wrong? Well, as it turned out, nothing, as Lando Norris came home first in Miami to take his maiden win in Formula 1. But anyways, that's all for now. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Get yourself subscribed to the channel for loads more content this year. And until next time, take care.